This episode of Accelerate is brought to you in part by Discover.org. Looking to close 4 times as many deals in half the time? Discover.org's industry-leading, human-verified sales intelligence gives you all of the data and insights like direct dials, org charts, planned projects, verified emails, and executive moves you need to stop wasting time on research and spend more time talking to the right decision-maker with the right message at the right time. Their team of 250-plus sales researchers do all the work so that you don't have to. 2,500 companies are already using Discover.org to win more deals. So check them out at www.discoverorg.com. That's www.discoverorg.com. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 597 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. Joining me today on Accelerate is my guest, Matt Sniff. Matt's founder and CEO at Map My Customers. The general topic we're going to talk about today is how to increase your call planning effectiveness. Now, as an industry, a sales industry, we're generally so focused on the growth of inside sales these days that we tend to forget that the substantial majority of salespeople are still employed out in the field as field sales reps. And so today we're going to focus on that. We're going to talk about ways that you can supercharge your outside reps' productivity to help them stay engaged with customers and close more sales. And it's really all about how do you make their time in the field as productive as possible to help maximize the quantity and value of their customer interactions within a given time and within a given territory. So make sure you join us for this conversation. If you'd like to see the show notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/597. Before I talk with Matt, let me remind you that today's show is brought to you in part by our friends at Discover.org. Discover.org platform is a game changer for sales and marketing. The feature-rich sales intelligence platform is supported by over 250 researchers who continually update contact data and provide account-specific insight to help sales and marketing teams break ahead of the pack. So see the product live at discoverorg.com/schedule-demo. That's discoverorg.com/schedule-demo. All right, let's jump right into it. Matt Sniff, welcome to Accelerate.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
My pleasure. So I guess standard question I open all my interviews with, and that is, in your opinion, what's the single biggest challenge that faces sales reps today?
That's a great question. I would have to say, and this, I'm kind of gonna touch on this later, but I think it's efficiency, right? I think, my intro to sales was really with my father, and he's been an outside salesperson for almost 40 years now. And I would see him, growing up as a kid, get into his, car on a Monday morning and just open up his laptop and just pour over tons and tons of, data in an Excel spreadsheet. And this was back, before the days of, the rise of SaaS businesses and, giant CRMs like Salesforce and all that. So this was back in the early...
Not only before the days of giant CRMs, before the day of CRMs at all. If it's 40 years before email, before laptops.
It wasn't that long ago. I'm not too old, but it was back in the day where we didn't have all the things we have now that could make us really efficient. I think I think nowadays there's so much technology at our disposal that can make us so much more productive, and we just need to realize that. I think a lot of folks are just kind of stuck in their old habits, or filling time with little to-dos that maybe have little or no importance, and they could be spending that time, being efficient with, visiting another customer on their way to another customer, or filling in routes if, somebody, they have an appointment with cancels or what have you. Just being really productive with your time, because the old saying, obviously, time is money, is especially true with sales folks, and your time is really valuable, and you want to get back to your family, you want to close the next deal. You're always looking for that leg up, and field salespeople especially are always looking for a leg up. Another meeting, another deal, another close, and it all boils down to, can you make that extra visit? Can you make that extra call? can you be that much more efficient than everybody else? What's going to be the differentiator between you and, your colleague, right?
So what did your father sell?
Flooring. He sells flooring.
Sells flooring, okay. And how big of a territory does he have?
So he started out, he's worked for a couple of different companies over the years, but he started out selling in just Northeast Ohio in the Cleveland area, Akron, Cleveland area. And then he moved on to the Michigan and Ohio region. And then when he moved into a new position at a different company, he kind of got most of the East Coast. So you can imagine from Florida to Maine, it's quite a large territory and quite a lot of business to take care of. So managing thousands of different accounts. And, the flooring industry is quite unique because it's actually pretty decentralized. There's not like one or two or three main, big box retailers selling flooring. It's distributed amongst a ton of little mom and pop shops and Carpet Ones, Abby's, Flooring Americas, things like that, right? So it's really hundreds of thousands of these little stores across the whole country. And, you have to keep in contact with those customers, right?
Yeah, so he was servicing dealers or resellers, as you said, potentially thousands of accounts.
Exactly. He's visiting every little shop and making sure they knew about his product and they knew how to sell it and they knew how to show it off. And eventually he, now he's a distribution manager and he manages just several, larger accounts, but still pops in and has to manage those reps that visit all those little accounts, right? So,
yeah, I think it would surprise a lot of people that are listening to the show that if you're in the Bay Area, if you're in Silicon Valley, you tend to think that, wow, there aren't such thing as field sales reps. Everybody must have gone inside. But the fact is that the vast majority of sales reps that are selling today are still field sales reps or a hybrid of some sort, right? But some part of their job is going out and meeting with customers. And I think that's a shock when you tell people that.
Yeah, no, having recently come back from the Bay Area, Andy, I still connect with friends and colleagues out there, and I hear about the latest and greatest, whether it be through Facebook groups or just through my friends, and there's some of my marketing buddies, they're talking about these new movements, and one of them was called and he was trying to really sell me on this one, H to H or human to human, right? He's like, we all have to be about H to H in our marketing messaging, right? And I'm just looking at him like, you aren't from the East Coast, are you?
Yeah. Well, and that's so funny, right? I'd written a article a few weeks ago that was all about, this brand new sales tactic that exists, which is actually leave the office and go meet your customers. Especially in the SaaS business and places like that where it rarely happens. So tell us about your customer, your company, because your company is all about field sales.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch, you brought up an interesting point just now, Andy. A lot of people on the West Coast, they might not, be aware of, that you can actually go visit your customers, that there are such things as field reps still out in the field selling every day face to face. There's actually quite a bit of emerging markets out there for field sales. And one of those is actually the cannabis business. And we get a lot of these type of companies in Colorado, California, Washington State coming on and using our platform as they're distributing their product across regional and state markets, right?
That's interesting. That's interesting.
So that's just absolutely. It's just an interesting little note. But yeah, about my company, about my customers. So, we started, back in 2015, early 2015, actually in the Bay Area. And then I moved back east, where I'm originally from, and we settled into the Triangle area. But, our tool sells directly to outside sales folks. And, you can get our tool on the App Store, Google Play Store, or visit our website at mapmycustomers.me. But what we basically do for field sales is we kind of automate their whole entire day. So we make them, we supercharge their productivity. We help them stay engaged with customers. We help them close more business. We help them, just basically never lose that business ever again. So that's kind of what we're focused on.
So, what was the impetus to start the company? I mean, you were pretty freshly new out of school. You hadn't really been in sales as far as, right? So, and obviously your father was a huge influence, but was that, sort of what you said, oh yeah, here's a need?
Yeah, it was actually my father's idea, Andy. And this was a directly pain that he had, and he came to me about 3 years ago, and he asked me to kind of solve this issue for him. And it was sort of, I was an engineer, former engineer in the Bay Area, and I was home for winter break one year, and he just, he came to me and he's like, "Can you help me solve this problem? I have this spreadsheet, I have all this data, but I really am losing track of all my accounts that I have to keep up with." And, I just kind of hacked something together really quickly, no intentions of starting a business or anything like that. And then I took it to him, and he showed some of his buddies and some of his colleagues up in, I think it was Syracuse, New York. And he goes to them, into a couple customers one day, and he goes, "How many accounts do you think you have in the Syracuse region?" And they go, "Oh, well, we know we have, the one on the West End, we have, Sally and Bob over here, and we have that other account on the north end of town." And he goes, "No, take a look at this map. You guys have 42 clients in just Syracuse." And that kind of blew their mind. And from there, I put it on the App Store, and I kind of just watched it grow. And at a certain point, was able to make enough revenue to take the company full time, and start growing the team, and give it a real shot at getting it somewhere.
Interesting. So hopefully Dad has a good stake in the company.
Yeah, him and I, it's an interesting relationship because you don't see this a lot. And actually, I wrote a blog article on this, right? I think it's called Father and Son Inc., right? You don't hear about father and son businesses in high tech, right? That's not something that, you really think about. But he's been a great mentor. And as you know, I come from an engineering background, not a sales background. Not that I haven't, been doing sales. What founder isn't a salesperson, right?
Sure.
But I've just had that hunger. I've been doing startups for about 7 years, ever since I got into college, and I love every aspect of running a startup company. It's absolutely sort of my lifeblood, right? So for me, there's nothing more special than to be able to share some of the success with my dad, and to get his mentorship on the sales end, and to grow this with him, Andy.
So tell us a little bit about the app so that people understand it, because again, some percentage of the audience, pretty driven by inside sales. We do have some field, obviously a good chunk of field salespeople as well that listen. So tell us about what it does, and then after that, we'll get into sort of who your primary customers are.
Yeah, so the iPhone app basically, and the Android app, there's really kind of four main value propositions that I like to describe. The first one, it's all about data visualization and getting insights from your data. So you can sync it with Salesforce, you can sync it with any big name CRM, HubSpot, Dynamics, Outlook, just a bunch of different CRMs, or just import your spreadsheet data. And about half of our company is actually just individual sales reps paying for this out of their own pocket, because it's actually such a good investment for them. It pays for itself in a matter of a week or two on just the amount they save with, traveling alone, not to mention the amount of extra, commission dollars that they will receive. But it helps them strategically. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so the primary application is optimizing the routes they travel when they call on customers.
Yeah, I think the two main things, optimizing routes is a really big one. And that's, part of the effectively planning their day, piece. And then the primary one, though, is actually just account targeting. So being able to strategically identify the accounts that you want to go see, because our application is best served from people who have at least 75 accounts or more that they have to maintain, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're going into a new, say you're going to a new, the prime example that I like to give a lot is, say you're going into a new city, say, San Francisco, and you want to see everybody who is within, 7 miles of city center, who you haven't seen in 2 months, who has a sales target of X dollars, and is open on Wednesday mornings for business. Then you could run that filter on a map, and you can visually, as an outside person, your whole day revolves around where are you going to go, right? It's where. It's like a Google Maps CRM. It's literally built for the field salesperson to go and find who they're going to go visit.
Yeah, I mean, I like this idea you have this find nearby feature, which I think back in the days when I first started in selling, and I was out driving in the Bay Area, in the East Bay Area, from people familiar from Fremont to Vallejo as my territory, and then out east to Brentwood or Antioch. I could have used that. Anytime I had extra time, an extra half hour or something, who's nearby that I could go call on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think it's it's really a whole suite of tools on top of that, right? So we have got a lot of tools that outside salespeople have generally went to a bunch of different applications for. So, for example, we have a business card scanner that automates, and all of these I'm about to name are kind of like, these are features in the grand scheme of things that will help automate your day as a salesperson and close more business, right? Business card scanning, automation of emails, automatic follow-ups and check-ins. So when you go to a customer, it automatically, logs that, and you can go back and take a look at where you've been. Automatic reminders of when you need to go follow up with people. And another cool feature is actually, so you can easily visualize who you haven't seen in a very long time. We have kind of a check-in map that kind of makes accounts darker and darker shades of red as it's been longer since you've seen them. So when you take a look at your territory, you take a look at your map of where you're going to go, instantly at one glance who you haven't seen in a while and where you need to plan your next trip, which is, really incredibly valuable for field sales folks.
Yeah, because prioritization is always the key. I mean, and is there a way that you filter that deep red with account size and other things?
Yeah, you can apply filters on top of it, everything like that, right? And that's the really cool part is the kind of the simplicity of the tool, but also how robust it can be. So basically, you can apply filters on top of that. You can put accounts into say one category called product A, another category called product C, and that's like two different products they sell. And maybe you have a group for sales rep Bob, if you're a team manager. So you can go onto the map and you could say, show me all the accounts that I have, Bob hasn't seen in a while who sells product C. And then I know I need to go talk to Bob about pushing this product a little bit harder in this market or what have you. Right. Mm-hmm. So you can really kind of, customize the tool to, do quite a lot.
So your ideal client profile is what from a company standpoint?
It's anybody who, has a sales team, and really we try to focus on sales teams. And we built a lot of, and spent a lot of time building features basically simply for teams, allowing them to easily share their data, set access rights on their data, kind of track locations, track if reps have been to places, so they can automatically log in and see that they've been to 10 customers in this area or that area, right? So the ideal client might be somebody who has a sales team of at least 10 folks, and each of those sales reps has at least 75 accounts or more. And I'm not going to name a specific industry per se, but I can say that industries that have gone really well for us are sort of pharmaceutical sales, right? Medical mm-hmm. device sales, and any sort of commodity like, we've got some users from, places like Mary Kay, right? They sell cosmetics, commodities, door to door, that kind of thing. And then another big industry would be just general IT. And there's actually a lot of folks in IT selling, in the field, going business to business, value added resellers, folks like that, right? So those are sort of the kind of clients that we see come onto our platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think any company that has like a business like your father works in that has resellers, it could be retailers, could be, as you said, value-added resellers, any sort of channel partners that they have to manage. And you have to go out and touch these people, then it seems like sort of an ideal product to help, as that, optimize your day.
Absolutely. And, it helps. We've had clients say, this is the single biggest advantage they have in their day. You help me increase the number of demos I do by, 100% in literally just opening this tool and using it for the first time for the first week. And in some industries, that's incredibly impactful, just getting one more demo or one more face-to-face meeting or, what have you. It's all about margins. And, that's kind of what we are, best at helping them do is be super efficient and productive and get the most out of their workday.
So what are you hearing from your customers in terms of feeling a pressure to bring more sales in-house and inside as opposed to maintaining field teams? I mean, are they committed to staying outside, or what are you sort of seeing with your customers?
I think they see going outside and selling in the field is sort of necessary, right? I mean, I think they bundle it with a hybrid approach of some inside, some outside.
Sure.
And I think what the interesting part is our tool actually can serve a little bit on the inside, but more on maybe sort of just the planning side of things. Like We have some marketers using our tool, but for the most part, it's most interesting for field sales people, obviously, when the routing comes into effect and when you're planning your routes and, planning sort of your schedule and everything like that. But, we get a lot of people who do, spend a lot of their time outdoors, but they use our tool on the inside sort of to do all the reporting, right, and all that. So some folks use it. We have other tools like a lead funnel and everything like that can sync back and forth with your CRM if you're using one. So they can still get a lot out of the tool through some of the sort of more robust charting and reporting that we offer. But for the most part, we do get a lot of startups using the tool, and like I mentioned, some emerging markets where you have to go out into the field and distribute and sell your product, and there's almost no other way to do it. So I think that's kind of one of the cool things about sales in general, and why sales is such an interesting industry. I think it'll be one of the very last industries that will be automated, right? If you think about it's just kind of mind-boggling how hard it would be to replace human to human interaction. And I think, like we talked about at the very beginning of the segment here, Andy, in the Valley, they're starting to, kind of like a fashion trend would come back, right? Like they're starting to come back and thinking, oh, well, how do we differentiate when everyone's super, zoned in on, perfecting inside sales? And they're like, well, let's go outside. Nobody's tried that yet, right? So
well, but it's true. And that's, I think I told you, that's what I'd written about recently, is that it's a huge differentiator if you actually go out and meet somebody. I mean, especially in a sale with any sort of complexity and any sort of lifetime contract value that's measured in tens of thousands of dollars, is one trip can spell a huge difference.
And I think who in their right mind who's a good salesperson would say, if you had a client that's 100 seats or like any sizable amount and an enterprise, that you wouldn't go and take them out to lunch. I mean, obviously you would go and take that client out to lunch,
but they don't.
And it's incredible that they don't. But that's what I'm saying. It's you build that rapport with that customer, and it's almost it's almost incredible that that we're at that point, right? In kind of today's selling climate.
Well, and decisions are made on the thinnest of differences between companies. And I asked this question when I speak to groups in public and so on. I said, so tell me how much you won by. What was your margin of victory? Are you 1% better, 5% better, 10% better on the deal you won? And the fact is, no one knows, right? You can't quantify that, but you have to assume that. And there's been some research done by this, by actually some professors that published an article a few years ago in the Harvard Business Review, is that your assumption sort of has to be that it's like 1 or 2%, and that those differences between you, since all the products are so commoditized these days so quickly, is those intangible things like getting out and meeting someone. That could be the 1%.
Well, I mean, think about what sales is, right? I mean, I was always fascinated by sales. When people ask me what my father did when I was a little kid, I would just be like, oh, he talks on the phone for a living, right? Like, I had no idea what he did, right? And I had no idea why his job. To be honest, I had no idea, what exactly his job entailed. And he told me, Matthew, one thing you got to remember, and I knew he wasn't selling the best product at the time. Back when he was at a company, in Cleveland, he was not selling the best flooring out there, and he knew it. But he told me, Matthew, like, they're not buying my product; they're buying from me. They're buying from Tom, and that's one thing you got to keep in mind is, people buy from people. And I think when you talk about nowadays, everybody's so analytical. I'm obviously very analytical myself as an engineer. When you talk about scoring, my marketing leads, for example, you give points when someone visits your site, when someone opens your email, blah, blah, blah. Right? Why would you not, when you take a look at how you're going to score a sales lead, like, why would you not incorporate, a physical touch point, right? Like that is probably, the grading for that is probably worth more than, almost anything else. Right. So, if things are like literally like 1 or 2% margins, right. So it's definitely a differentiator. Like you said, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. I think it's, as you said, it's perhaps becoming a fad, a trend, but it's something people really need to be mindful of. The people that are always in the field are probably laughing as they hear this, but because they understand what a difference it makes. I mean, I can't even envision, some things, because I sold some, very large, complex communications networks for years that, millions of dollars. And it's a hybrid approach, right? I mean, I had customers that overseas that I may have only seen once, maybe twice before they spent $3, $4, $5 million with me. But I couldn't have gotten it done without those face-to-face meetings.
I mean, solution selling is one of the harder, obviously things to automate. And I think that's what makes sales such an interesting industry. Because you think about how you would automate, in your position, selling that, complex, solution to a client. It would be really difficult. And it would, it would certainly, it certainly would be really difficult,
Well, it would have been impossible. And given the sort of the breadth of stakeholders that had to be involved in making the decision, as well as just the whole process of building credibility with them. Because in those cases, I was working for startups, Valley-based startups, California-based startups, dealing against established brand names selling multi-billion dollars a year worth of revenue. And so how did we differentiate ourselves? It required a lot of relationship building, which some amount could take place over the phone, but to really cement it and to really ask the tough questions, you had to do it in person.
I mean, absolutely. And, it's interesting that we talk about, outside sales and sort of the reemergence of outside sales because, our company, where most of our sales are inside, right? I mean, we're selling a software product. So, but now as we get in close bigger clients, it's, we're absolutely, you got to believe that we're out in the field and we're taking, customers to lunch and we're building that rapport with them. And it's a really important thing. And that's also why I mentioned at the beginning of the show about, follow-ups is because, for us, it's also about, cold calling, right? And I think cold calling is something that's not so much so dead either. I think that's something that's absolutely necessary. When I take a look at, others in the space, I see there's, a large focus on inbound leads, and absolutely, 99% of our leads today are pretty much inbound leads, right? And that's great. But we have to we can't just rely on what's coming inbound to us. We have to, especially for our market, I think it's more of, we have a bit of education to do, right? Like you and I are talking about this right now. There's some education as to why you even need to be out in the field nowadays. So when we have to do that, we have to really think about, how we're going to do that. And I think, that's going to take an outbound effort. So,
well, also in your case, you're actually targeting specific accounts. So, yeah, I mean, you can use some automation on targeted accounts, obviously the whole account-based selling approach. But yeah, sometimes you pick up the phone, just call somebody.
Absolutely. I mean, and account-based stuff can work really well. And it's not, as a startup, we don't have all the resources in the world. And there's nothing better than just, old school determination and grit and old school, prospecting and just picking up the phone and getting any speck of information on a customer that you can from, LinkedIn, Google, Hoovers, what have you, right? And just going out and picking up the phone.
Hoovers, there's a blast from the past.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, not to date myself necessarily, but I remember using the printed Hoovers to try to find prospects.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, just to give you a sense of when I got started. Back when it was really hard. So, okay. Well, so let's just finish up. So how do you see what you're doing evolving? I mean, how do you see sort of the future of Map My Customers going in terms of the app that you're selling and the customers you support?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as far as where we focused our efforts, it's really on being, kind of automating all field sales, right? Being that really efficient, efficiency, that outside sales efficiency tool for teams. And I think we see ourselves building, obviously, kind of more of a Teams product and building into, more of a custom, set of solutions for teams and involving, I think involving a lot more data science into it, right? Providing some unique things around insights into cadences with, what kind of, not providing recommendations as much as, yeah, I guess you could call them recommendations, but not telling salespeople how to sell, but, at least giving them kind of like, okay, based on the data, this is the cadence or this is the temporal distribution that works for when you, what has worked in the past based on what's closed in your funnel, right? This is when you should be calling, visiting. This is, this is how someone else has closed based on their distribution of meetings, calls, visits, blah, blah, blah. And kind of, crunching all that data. And, we have 90% of our users actually not syncing with an outside CRM and actually using our platform as their kind of like simpler CRM system, right? So thus we can do a lot more interesting things, and we can provide them with a lot more insight into their data than just this is who you should go visit. More so like this is how you should kind of, think about, or this is, constructing your sales process or your sales follow-ups. Based on what you've done in the past, based on what others on your team have done, and just thinking about unique ways to kind of, push the ball forward with that stuff. And I think, our solution today is a very basic, fundamental need for salespeople. How do you plan your day? And how do you know who to visit and when to visit them, right? And I think moving forward, that won't change. It'll just become a little bit better with, more insights as this product evolves into sort of, how you've sold in the past and maybe suggestions on how you should sell in the future, right?
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I mean, selling is pretty simple. It's not easy. In fact, it's very hard, but it is simple. And as you said, organize your day, organize your route, master the basics, follow up, and I've sort of reduced sales to four key things that if you master, you can succeed. And it's just execute the fundamentals, and you'll have a good chance of success.
Absolutely. I think technology plays an important role in automating a lot of the mundane tasks salespeople have. Follow-ups, routing to customers, emails, things like that. And there's a lot of great tools nowadays: Slack, Boomerang, Hunter.io, Lucify, tools like this that help prospect, help make you more efficient at all the things you do every day, including Map My Customers. And I think that's absolutely stuff that we have to embrace. But I think when it comes back down to it, why is stuff like, outside sales, why are people talking about this again? Why are we sitting here talking about this? It's because it's back to those fundamentals, right? And that's, it seems like that's the case in a lot of things in life, right? So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the fundamentals always, master the fundamentals, and that's most of what you need to do. All right. Well, Matt, thank you very much for joining us. Tell folks how they can find out more about Map My Customers and connect with you.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me. So if you want to learn more about Map My Customers, you can come to our site at mapmycustomers.me, or just check us out. Look us up on the Apple App Store or Google Play Stores. We look forward to connecting with any potential sales leaders out there who we can get feedback from.
Okay, excellent. Well, again, thanks. And friends, thank you for spending this time with us today. Make sure you come back, join us next time for another great episode of Accelerate. Until then, if you get a chance, make sure you subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or whatever application you use to listen to podcasts, and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. So thanks again for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.